welcome everybody to the EHR4CR webinar, where we're going to take you through some background to the project and then a focus on the protocol feasibility process and the results of the pilot. So my name is Richard Perkins, and I'm going to be joined by some partners in crime today. Matt Sundgren, who's the coordinator of the EHR4CR project. He's based in Sweden at AstraZeneca, and he will take us through quite a quick overview of the EHR4CR project. Florence Boterius from Novartis in Basel. She will take us through the rationale for protocol feasibility and the process that's involved and the role of EHR4CR in that process. And David Voits from Custodix in Belgium will take us through a demonstration of the platform so you can see how that works. And then Justin Dudes from Münster University in Germany will introduce us to the approach that's been taken to the protocol feasibility pilots and some of those first results. So with that, I'm going to pass over to Matt Sundgren so that he can take us through the background to the project.
Thank you. So I will take you through the EHR4CR project and some of the important sort of problem statement that was actually the basis for the project. And this slide very much represents the problem statement that EHR4CR is addressing. And as you can see here, it's actually two big industry-centric growth in information communication technology that has been going on for the last 15, 20 years, and it's accelerating. On the right-hand side, you can see the healthcare environment where now electronic health records is being generated across US and Europe and other regions at an enormous rate, and that is expected to continue. This trend and the subsequent accessibility of health data is actually bringing information and knowledge to the point of care and is moving from a specialist-centric toward a more patient-centric information as one type of example of this trend. On the left-hand side is the realm of new drug development environment, and especially the clinical trials environment, which have also undergone a radical electronification. And for example, the majority of clinical trials today is now sort of within the process of electronic data capture. And it's a number of electronification process that deals with that kind of data generation. However, these two information domains are not connected, and the efficiency becomes very obvious in this clinical trial interface. And that is very much where EHR4CR has taken in its objective. Furthermore, this kind of gap has other kind of implication, and this kind of different electronic health record system is different across countries, and it's also different data and so on. But the opportunity to actually leverage these data across countries, systems, and sites in order to speed up protocol design and patient recruitment, data capture, and safety reporting, these services is within the scope of EHR4CR project. And the reason for that is actually that these services is so much needed and can make such a great difference when it comes to enhance quality, speed, cost, and getting medicines faster to the market. Having said this, the trustworthy reuse of electronic health records, there's a number of services just waiting, but since that is not within the scope of EHR4CR project. This slide also display another important aspect of EHR4CR, and that is to create scalable solution across countries. I mean, to be able to demonstrate that this can be done on a one-to-one basis between a hospital and a sponsor has already been proven. And therefore, we, in the very heart of the project, is to provide solutions where we can use electronic health records information on a scalable way. In order to do so, the kind of opportunities and benefits is, of course, not only limited to the pharmaceutical industry or academic research institute. There is a win-win for all stakeholders involved, and I think that is a very important aspect. For example, EHR4CR solution and its scalable services in the future that will come from that can result, for example, that hospitals can get better quality on their data. There will be opportunities for them to demonstrate their capabilities to be subject for principal investigator. The connection to a scalable platform can also allow hospitals to build up services that enhance their ability to reuse EHRs to optimize treatment of patients. As you can understand, the number of services that are just waiting are great. And of course, in the end, this will be beneficial because we could actually get medicines faster to patients. Such an undertaking to reuse health data from electronic health records is, of course, problematic. And this is truly an example. I think I claim that this is a project that cannot be achieved by one single stakeholder. And I think IMI, as Innovative Medicines Initiative, which is the largest public-private partnership research program existing, provides the excellent opportunity to combine private and public academic collaboration in order to succeed in such an endeavor. So EHR4CR is one of the largest European public-private partnership in this area, and it's mandated by IMI. It is within the IMI program. It's a 4-year project, and we have got approval for extension by additional 12 months in order to make all the preparations and activities, taking it from an R&D environment to a deployment environment. And the EHR4CR project brings together a quite amazing key stakeholder groups, which contains the 35 partners, including 11 hospital sites across Europe, and with 10 pharmaceutical companies as part of the project, and also an advisory board, which also include a representation from EMA and FDA. Of course, it is important for such a project to demonstrate that these kind of services can work across different countries and different legal aspects in Europe. And therefore, we're very happy to have the number of hospitals on board in this project, together with excellent capabilities of other academic informatics-centered partners. So the project has two important pieces of deliverables. It's first a technical platform where the set of 3 services can be executed on in a scalable fashion. You will hear more details from David about the aspects of this open platform. And the 3 services I already alluded to, that this is the top-ranked EHR-enabled services that can really provide value. Protocol feasibility to enhance and validate the protocols that's subject for clinical trials, and also to enhance the patient identification and recruitment, identify eligible sites and subsequently patients faster, has a great impact. together with a clinical trial data exchange, which is also a service which deals with the fact that today it's enormous work that we actually that we take data that is already residing in EHRs and put them in our clinical ECRF forms. Then there is the business model, which in order to make these services be manageable and also be running in a scalable fashion with different partners, with service provider, with data provider, hospitals, and service users, we need a business model that can sort of direct and govern how these services can be run. So that is also important, the deliverable of the project. Another deliverable which deals with business model in an overarching way, which is not subject for this webinar, is the institute, which is also deliverable for the project. And that webinar is going to be launched and executed next February next year. So I will not spend so much time on that. So with that, as the kind of platform for the project, I have the pleasure to pass over to Florence Bottery.
Good morning and good afternoon to everybody. So these slides, based on the EHR4CR platform and on the business model, our work stream has undertaken the task to design and test 3 scenarios, namely starting from top, the protocol feasibility, which is the topic of this webinar, the patient identification and recruitment, and currently we're working on the clinical trial data exchange scenario. In the next slide, you will see the process covering these 3 scenarios, including as well scope. So starting from the left with the protocol feasibility, which helps to optimize protocol design, and you will hear more eligibility criteria. We move towards the right. We map the e-case report form to the clinical data warehouse, allowing for the to be able to conduct a clinical trial using EHR data. And then we can identify and recruit patients through this platform. This will also, in particular by conducting clinical trials using EHR data, we will be able to minimize data entry, which obviously data entry and transcribing data is an error-prone process. The focus of this webinar is the protocol feasibility. It is imperative to optimize protocols and clinical trial planning to overcome some of the very costly and labor-intensive challenges. Bear in mind that, as indicated on this slide, 1/3 of protocol amendments are so-called avoidable protocol amendments. And one should consider that on average, across all protocols and development phases, the average is 2.5 amendments per protocol at the cost of about, as indicated here, of about $500,000 per amendment. So clearly there is, through optimizing protocol feasibility, there is a hope to reduce the number of protocol amendments, and this can be done, obviously, as indicated here on the bottom two bullets, by optimizing eligibility criteria and protocol design, and identifying countries and sites with potential suitable patient cohorts. So, for instance, if initially we want to use eligibility criteria which might be too strict, it could be that we don't find a sufficient number of patients at the sites or at countries, and we can. So it's important then to relax the eligibility criteria in order to increase the pool of patient cohorts that could potentially be included in the trial. And clearly, this could be possible with the EHR4CR platform. Always speaking about protocol feasibility, the process is currently accomplished in most companies, and this is on the left side of this slide, by developing questionnaires, looking at, for instance, the number of suitable patients at a given site. And these questionnaires are usually completed by principal investigators based on their experience, but also very much relying on rule of thumb. So this is not fact-based information, as it would be possible by, for instance, using the EHR4CR platform. In some other cases, and this is indicated on the right side of the slide, some companies use data sets which are provided by healthcare services, but obviously these data sets are extremely costly, and they are difficult to query, and they are of limited use because they provide very often just a time window information. In the EHR4CR scenario, it is possible to improve protocol feasibility in three actions, which are listed here on the slide. Obviously, searching electronically millions of EHR data to assess the suitable number of patients that could be potentially entered in the clinical trial. Obviously, optimizing protocol design, as I mentioned, by relaxing or, on the contrary, making the eligibility criteria more stringent, and identifying the countries and the sites with the suitable patients. And this is all possible from one user interface. This slide, and you will hear more from my colleague David, is just presenting an illustration of what is available to the user. So here on the left side, you see basically how a query is built, and in the middle you see a result, and you will notice that indeed the display is indicating that depending on which eligibility criterion you're looking, the patient population might decrease, and that is an indication for the user that perhaps you need to relax that specific eligibility criterion in order to increase the patient cohort. As I said, the EHR4CR platform is one user interface. The user runs so-called queries, which can be accepted by the site, and the site then can aggregate de-identified data, which is then sent back to the user, can be a pharma company or a CRO. And we use also the rule of fuzzing. That is, we want, if a site has only, for instance, one or a few patients, to basically make it to hide the way, so that we do not run the risk of potentially identifying patients, which could happen in the case of rare diseases, bearing in mind that currently there is an estimate of anything between 5,000 to 7,000 rare diseases. The next slide is just to present the workflow. So basically, a user accesses the desk, the workbench, where the query is then sent to the service provider. It is distributed to the central platform, and from the central platform, this query is distributed to the hospitals indicated here. In the hospital, the query is received, and they are basically querying a local database which contains de-identified data sets, and only a number of potentially suitable patients is returned, and this number is then consolidated and sent back to the workbench, and the results are then sent back to the user. I am now switching to David Volz as the next speaker.
What I'll be showing you in the next 10 minutes is a demonstration of the distributed system that was developed within EHR4CR to support the protocol feasibility scenario. And so what will happen in this demonstration is that I'm going to be building within a feasibility study, I'll be building a query consisting of a number of eligibility criteria. I'll be distributing that query to a number of sites I'll be selecting from the platform registry, and once these queries have been executed locally at each of the selected sites, I'll be showing the results coming back from those sites, and I'll be showing how I can make further changes to my query in order to see how certain criteria or certain threshold values in my criteria will be influencing my patient count that I get back. You'll see me switching a couple of times between the central workbench, which is used at the sponsor site, so either by a pharma company or a CRO, for the protocol design for the feasibility conduct. And I'll be switching sometimes to the tools that are used at each of the clinical sites for administration of the protocol feasibility query system. So without much further ado, let's go over to the demonstration. So here we go. What what you're seeing here is the login screen for the study workbench used by the sponsor to manage feasibility studies and the underlying queries that are being created for those. So what you see after login on this dashboard is you'll be able to see a listing of the sites currently connected to the platform, ready to accept queries. You'll see also recent activity, and of course you'll be able to do the typical things you can do with such a system, such as managing your account, managing your user group, the group of users working in the same group on the same study, for instance. And what I'm showing here is the creation of a feasibility study. So in the listing, you see below we have a list of currently defined studies. I've just created a new study, and when I click the link to it, I'll be taken over to the dashboard for that study, on which I'll be able to see which members of my team are currently assigned on that study, meaning that they can do certain operations on that study. Of course, you're able also to manage the study metadata as well as the access rights that are granted to each of the study managers to work on this feasibility study. As this is a new study, we don't have any available queries yet, so let's create one. And so when we create this first query, it will initially be in version 0, meaning that it hasn't been edited yet. And you'll see later that I'll be able to create new versions of that query, and I can work at any point in time on any of the versions that I have been working on before. So now that we have our first query, let's select it and go over to the interface called the Query Builder, which allows me to formulate my eligibility criteria in the form of inclusion and exclusion criteria. And each of these inclusion and exclusion criteria are composed of a number of Boolean and temporal constraints, and so you're able to combine certain selection criteria and connect them through Boolean logic or through temporal relations between those constraints. So the first criterion I just made is I'm looking for patients at least 18 years old. So I just drag the concept I'm using and I drop it on the pane. Let's go over to a second criterion, and this one is I'm looking for patients diagnosed with non-insulin dependent diabetes mellitus. So on the left side, you'll see a tree of terms that is being served by a central terminology service on the platform, and I'm able to browse through that reference terminology. And so in this case, for diagnosis, I have to go to the diagnosis subtree and select the criterion, the concept I'm interested in. Another inclusion criterion I'll be having right now is I'm looking for overweight and obese patients, meaning that the BMI, the body mass index of the patient, should be more than 25 kilograms per square meter. And it should be, another inclusion, it should be below 40 to exclude non-morbidly obese patients. So again, using this dialog with selecting the cutoff values. And now we'll go over to a new inclusion criterion, and this time I'll be looking for lab values. I'm interested in hemoglobin values, and I want to include patients which have a A1C level above 7.5%. So when I drop this on the pane, I have to specify again the threshold value and specify whether I'm interested in the first of the or the last entry in the data source regarding this criterion. You'll see that happening every time, and sometimes you'll be interested in the first occurrence and sometimes in the last occurrence. Let's add some exclusion criteria now. So an exclusion criterion in this case would be to exclude patients diagnosed with acute myocardial infarction. And a final exclusion criterion that we're going to be added will incorporate a temporal constraint this time. I'm only interested in, I want to exclude patients that have been treated with insulin or analogs in the past 12 months. So what I do is I drop the temporal constraint before now and set it to 12 months, meaning that I will be looking at the last 12 months that occurred before now. And when I go back to the tree with my concepts, when I go to the medication category, I'll be looking for insulin and analogs, and I'll be dropping that in the placeholder that you see on the right, which will effectively mean that I'm only retaining, for this exclusion criterion patients matching within the 12 last months. This time I've selected last because since I'm interested in the last 12 months, I have to select the last occurrence of this criterion. What you see now on the screen is now that I'm happy with my query. You can see the query in human readable form, which is a form which can be used by clinicians to share query information on queries you're working on. Now we're going over to the clinical sites, and here I'm showing you a number of tools that are used locally to manage the query endpoints. So what you just saw was a tool to allow mapping of reference terms that are used in the central platform to map them to the local terms, whatever local terms are used in my query endpoints. There is also a number of other tools that allow me to configure how my query endpoint will be connecting to my clinical data warehouse. I can do a number of local study management actions. I can configure the mapping of the query constructs to the concepts in my local clinical data warehouse. And finally, I can configure my endpoints to be ready to accept incoming queries. So now that everything is properly set up, we'll go back to the central workbench, and what you see here is I'm selecting a number of sites to which I'm going to be sending my query that I have just saved. So what you see here is this query has been saved and distributed to the endpoints that are specified here in the interface. I already received results from one endpoint, so let's go over to that particular site, and let's have a look in the audit trail locally to see whether we can find this query that has just been executed. So when we look at this latest entry, this is the one that has just been sent, and when I select it, I'm able to look into the further details, meaning that I can see the actual query that was sent to this endpoint, but also the authentication information referring to the end user executing this query, as well as the number of database queries that have been executed on my clinical data warehouse, as well as the results that have been communicated back to the central workbench tool. So let's go back to that central workbench, and now that we have results back from all endpoints, let's have a look at the results. So when we look at the results, we'll be able to see an aggregated overview as well as an individual overview per site, per responding sites. And for each of the criteria I have specified in my query, I'll see a breakdown according to age and gender categories, showing me how each of the individual criteria is influencing the number of patients that match these criteria. So I'll be seeing for each of these criteria in isolation what the effect is of this criterion, as well as the global effect by returning me the combined results of all criteria taken into consideration at the same time. So now that I have my results back, and you can see I have a high number of results for each of the sites, let's go back to the query and modify one of the parameters and send the query again and see how that influences the resulting counts from that modified query. So in this case, I'll be changing the cutoff value for the hemoglobin A1C count, and I'll be looking for patients having a value above 10%. So now that I changed my query, I'll be saving it again, and I'll be running the query again selecting the same endpoints as I did before, and I'll be submitting that query, that modified query again, and I should be able to see how that change has influenced my my matching cohort of patients. While we're waiting for responses, we'll have a look at the version of our query, and you can see it's currently on version 2 because I have just made a modification. And this tool also keeps track of all versions of queries, meaning that I can, at any point in time, I can further work on any of the query versions I have worked on before, meaning that I have a complete backlog of every action I've been doing before. Now that we already have one result and we're waiting for the others, let's go back to the results and have a look. And you'll see now that I've changed this criterion, I only have one matching patient where I had multiple patients before. So that concludes the demonstration. So now I'll be handing over control to Justin of MIMS.
Yeah, thank you, David. Hello, everyone. I will take you now through the results for the protocol feasibility scenario. Okay. Yes, I have control. Okay. For the piloting of the first scenario, we tested the viability and performance of the EHR4CR platform. We conducted tests at 11 major university hospital sites across Europe. We have 2 in Germany, that would be Münster and Erlangen, 2 in Paris, 2 in France, Paris and Rennes. We have Dundee, Glasgow, Manchester, and the University College and King's College London in the UK. We have Geneva in Switzerland and Warsaw in Poland. We analyzed many eligibility criteria to identify common data elements, to load these into the EHR4CR compliant data warehouses with de-identified data from more than 5 million patients. In total, we used 12 clinical studies for our evaluations. We conducted several tests of proof of concepts over the years now at different points in time. We had an initial UAT test, user acceptance test, with 4, which was later extended to 10 studies. In October last year, we tested whether the counts produced by the system are reliable, which we could show that they are. Just recently, we carried out a scalability test using realistic test data from 200 and scaled it up to 200,000 patients. There we saw that the execution time scales up linear, which is the best possible outcome, and even for 200,000 patients, the results were returned in less than 5 minutes. Also recently, we conducted an effectiveness and efficiency testing where we compared the current process to the EHR4CR approach. Both approaches were compared against the number which was created or received from a manual chart review done by a medical professional. What we can already say is that the EHR4CR platform is a lot faster. We were able to receive results within minutes instead of days or even weeks. And when eligibility criteria are well formulated and the data warehouses contain good data, the EHR4CR platform can estimate or create estimates which can be more accurate than the results PIs deliver. Currently, we are also doing a user satisfaction test to evaluate the functions of the query builder. As I already mentioned before, we analyzed many eligibility criteria, and from these we created an inventory of common data elements. These elements are important for pharma, and they are documented in the hospitals at the same time. The inventory consists of 75 elements, and it was published in the Trials Journal earlier this year. This is, of course, ongoing work, and we're currently working on a validation of an extended list, which is suitable for patient recruitment, and it contains, at the moment, 150 data elements. Here you can see a visualization of the completeness of the data inventory. Green means that the elements of these columns are highly available. Red means that the availability is low, and black stands for data elements that are not available. Reasons why elements are not available can be A, that it's simply not documented, or B, that the sites used only a subsystem or even highly specialized systems and not the whole EHR for this evaluation, or that they did not get the necessary approvals to access this data in time. As you can see, the latter was true for 2 of the sites, but since this evaluation was done, we have come a long way, and the completeness increased over time. Here you can see one of the studies we used for one of the evaluations, as it looks like in the platform. In this example, we have several criteria which are linked by Boolean logic and which contain temporal constraints. This is the result visualization as already been shown in the demo, so I will not go into this in detail any further. What we can say from our proof of concept tests is that hospital data can be used, the platform responds very fast, and that the platform produces correct counts. What we also saw was that the patient's counts depend on the number and the quality of the eligibility criteria and the data in the EHRs. And sometimes the creation and modification of queries can seem complex. But overall, we were able to create a transnational platform across various systems and hospitals. To create a platform, we had to overcome some key hurdles. We dealt with interoperability challenges, which are complicated because of the different local systems, languages, and terminologies used. We could also overcome security and privacy concerns by using de-identified data, and because no patient-level data leaves the hospitals, the only counts that are returned are aggregated information, so no patient-level data leaves the hospital. We could also create some confidence in the data through the user satisfaction, through the user functionality test, for example, which was done only for a test data set. So this topic is, of course, important, but it's more of an ongoing work. So what does a hospital have to do to become an EHR4CR pilot site, you may ask? First, access to the data has to be obtained. All the approvals have to be in place, and local guidelines have to be followed. To support this task, templates were created within the project. Then, the local EHR systems have to be analyzed, and the available data has to be identified. This data then and the corresponding codes have to be mapped to the central EHR4CR terminology, and at the end, the technical components have to be set up at the site. And with this, I will hand over to Mats again for a short summary.
Thank you, Justin. So just to summing up this webinar, the EHR4CR project is an important initiative, not only because it's trying to solve a very important challenge, which have a huge implication, not only for the life science, but also to bring much more efficiency and reuse of important patient data in a trustworthy way across different systems and countries. And it is also the first one in Europe who undertakes this challenge. So it brings together multiple stakeholders from different areas, which is also the opportunity of IMI as a research, public-private research program. And the project is a starting point of actually demonstrate and bringing evidence in order to make scalable solution of using this health data, because it is in the scalability that we can provide the enough evidence, for example, in order to validate clinical trial protocols and bring more granularity and efficiency into site selection and patient recruitment. But it also brings the opportunity of scalable services that is just waiting to be developed. But the barriers that this area has seen over the last sort of 20 years has been significant, and the EHR4CR project actually brought in expertise, knowledge, and solutions to actually, we would not initiate such a project if we didn't have the confidence and technical solutions in order to bring these first services into fruition. And that is today, it has been perhaps not been exemplified enough, but it's no data that is leaving the hospitals in the protocol feasibility service. No data is leaving hospitals. The setup that we have, I think it has been touched upon, is that EHR4CR service and the platform is not querying the EHR or original EHR system, but is querying a clinical data warehouse. So the number of measures that we have taken into the design phase in this project is very important to be compliant with all possible security measures. And therefore, this project is important. And it's achieving the expectation because it is too important. It's three important aspects in this project. It is, of course, the ability to successfully connect with various and multitudes of EHR systems. It is an impossible task. I think this question was raised from European Medical Agency a couple of months ago, that they said, is the project actually developing a new conformant EHR system? No, absolutely not. It is the data elements that provide the lenses to go through the different systems and ability to trace them. And therefore, the interoperability solutions that we bring in is very important. The data security and privacy, I already touched upon that. That is that we're only dealing with de-identified data. And as I said, no data is leaving the hospital. It only counts at leaving and getting to the platform. Of course, confidence data brings, of course, to the matter of what the project is going to do in the extension year in 2015. And that is, of course, also to doing activities in order to build more evidence of the EHR platform and services. And we are going to undertake a number of activities next year, where for example, we are going to do activities in order to bring in new hospitals, doing engagement activities with service provider and other stakeholders in order to understand the best and optimal roadmap for deployment of these services and other services. And thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, is to build up and establish the European Institute for Innovation through Health Data, which is the name of the EHR Institute, which we called it 7 months ago. But we got very strong input from stakeholders in the European Commission and at IMI, and that input was that this institute cannot only be limited to the EHR4CR project. It must be open to other important initiatives, past, present, and future, which deals with the reuse of health data. And therefore, we have broadened the scope, but it is the EHR4CR project that makes and drives the institute into existence next year. So, with that, I thank you very much for your patience. I know that the technology today may have been sort of the volume and so on and so forth may have not been optimal. And I would like to hand over to you, Richard.
So this is just the start of the communication process. So we want to carry on engagement with you. You can send questions at any time to comms@EHR4CR.eu, and we will make sure somebody makes contact with you or you get answers. Thank you very much to the presenters, and thank you again for participating.